There was a sound, once, that meant the future. Not a roar, a whine, the high, smooth climbing whistle of a jet engine spooling up on a runway. In the years after the war, that sound was everywhere a person looked toward tomorrow. It was in the movies. It was at the air show. It was in the magazines on the coffee table that promised your children would fly to work and your house would clean itself. America had heard that sound win a world war, and now it was the sound of everything that was coming. The good, humming, jet-powered future. And then, for about 2 years in the middle of the 1960s, that sound, that exact sound, the whine of a genuine jet turbine, came from a driveway. An ordinary driveway, on an ordinary street, in 133 ordinary American towns. If you were a boy on a bicycle in one of those towns, you never forgot it. A neighbor would come out in the morning, a regular man with a regular job. He'd get into a low bronze car, the color of root beer, a car that looked like it had landed rather than parked, and he'd start it. And it wouldn't cough or rumble the way every other car on the block did. It would whine. It would spool up like a small airliner getting ready to leave the earth. And then he'd back out of the driveway and drive to work in a car powered by a jet engine. There was a time when Detroit tried everything, and this is the strangest, boldest, most beautiful thing it ever tried. The time Chrysler built a car with a jet engine, painted it the color of the future, and then handed the keys to 203 perfectly ordinary American families and said, "Here, live with it. Tell us what it's like to drive tomorrow." This is the story of the Chrysler Turbine Car, and it does not end the way a thing this wonderful should. To understand how a jet engine ended up in a family car, you have to meet the man who spent 30 years of his life chasing it. His name was George Huebner, and at Chrysler they called him, fondly, the father of the turbine car. Huebner was an engineer of the old, obsessed kind. His love affair with the turbine began before the Second World War, back when Chrysler was helping build aircraft engines. And a turbine, you have to understand, is a fundamentally different idea from the engine in your car. The engine in your car is a box of controlled explosions, pistons slamming up and down, hundreds of parts hammering away, converting a violent thrash into forward motion. A turbine doesn't slam anything. It spins. Air comes in, fuel burns, and a wheel of blades simply whirls, smoothly, continuously, tens of thousands of times a minute. No pistons pounding, no thrashing, just a clean spinning column of power. Huebner looked at that idea, the thing that flew airplanes, and he asked a question that would consume his entire career. Why can't a family have one? And the dream had real beauty to it, because the turbine wasn't just smoother. It had almost no moving parts compared to a piston engine, 80% fewer. It didn't need antifreeze. It didn't care if the morning was freezing cold. It would run, in theory, almost forever, because nothing inside it was beating itself to death. And, this is the part that became legend, it would run on anything at all that would burn. Diesel, kerosene, jet fuel, home heating oil, peanut oil. It did not need the one specific, refined, particular fuel that every other car on Earth was chained to. After the war, Huebner gathered a few fellow believers, engineers named Bud Mann and Sam Williams. Remember that second name, Sam Williams, because he comes back at the very end of this story in a way you won't see coming. And Chrysler began, quietly, to build turbine cars. And they worked. In 1956, Chrysler took a turbine-powered Plymouth and drove it clear across the country, New York to Los Angeles, the first time a turbine car had ever crossed America. It made the trip without a single problem. For Huebner, this was the proof. This wasn't a stunt. The future ran. It worked. And now he was going to do something no car company had ever dared. He wasn't going to show the turbine car at an auto show behind a velvet rope. He was going to give it to the people. He was going to find out what happened when you parked the future in a regular American garage and let a regular American family live with it. Now, one more thing about this car before we go on, and it ties a knot back to where we've already been. The body of this jet-age machine, that gorgeous low bronze shape, was hand-built by the master Italian coach builders at Ghia in Turin. But the man who designed it, the head of Chrysler Styling who shaped that silhouette, was a man named Elwood Engel. And you've already met Elwood Engel, even if you didn't know his name. He's the man Chrysler hired away from Ford. He's the man they brought in to replace Virgil Exner, the car that ended last week's story. The man who took Exner's chair, designed the car that begins this one. One company, one continuing story. The chair changes hands, and the dreaming goes on. So in October of 1963, Chrysler did the most extraordinary thing in this entire series. They built 50 of these cars, 50 handmade, jet-powered bronze machines, on top of 5 prototypes, and they gave them away, not for keeps, for 3 months at a time, to strangers. Here is how it worked, and it still sounds impossible. An ordinary person could apply, and over the next 2 years, 203 of them were chosen, 180 men and 23 women from age 21 to 70, living in 133 different cities across all 48 states. A schoolteacher, a milkman, a housewife, a small-town doctor. Each family got a real jet-powered car, free, for 3 months. Chrysler asked only 2 things in return. Pay for your own fuel, and keep a diary. Write down everything, every day, what it was like to live with the future. Think about what that meant on those streets. For 3 months, the most futuristic vehicle on planet Earth was parked outside a split-level house next to the garbage cans, getting backed over the kids' bicycles, driven to the grocery store and the bowling alley and church. The neighbors would gather, the kids would beg for rides, and the family at the center of it became, for one season of their lives, the most interesting people in town. More than 1 million miles those 203 families drove. 1 million miles of ordinary American life, powered by jet engines. And then there was the fuel. Because the turbine's party trick, that it would burn almost anything, turned out to be irresistible, and people tested it. They ran the cars on diesel and kerosene, sure, but the stories that got out were wilder than that. They whispered that the thing would run on perfume, on vodka, on Chanel No. 5. And then came the afternoon that made the turbine car a legend forever. One of these cars went on a tour around the world, and it found its way to Mexico City, and to the desk of the president of Mexico himself, a man named Adolfo López Mateos. And the president, having heard this fantastic claim that the car would drink anything, decided to test it. He asked the Chrysler man standing there, "Will it run on tequila?" And the Chrysler man didn't know, so he made a telephone call all the way back to Detroit, to Huebner's engineers. And those engineers, God bless them, sent somebody out to buy a few jugs of cheap tequila, poured it into a test turbine right there in the lab, and ran it. And it ran perfectly. They called Mexico City back and said, "Yes, Mr. President, it'll run on tequila." So they filled the tank with tequila. And the president of Mexico went for a drive in an American jet car burning 80-proof liquor. You could not invent this. Nobody would believe you. And it happened. But back at home, in those split-level houses with the turbine cars parked next to the garbage cans, the diaries were filling up. And the diaries were starting to tell a story Chrysler had not entirely wanted to hear. So here's the question that's been sitting in the back of your mind this whole time. If it was this wonderful, this smooth, this durable, this magical, a car that ran on tequila and whined like a jet and thrilled an entire country, then why isn't your car a turbine right now? Why did this future never arrive? The answer was being written, in pencil and in ink, in 203 kitchen table diaries across America. And the diaries, which Chrysler had begged the families to keep, honestly, every day, were telling a story Chrysler had not entirely wanted to hear. The first thing was thirst. A turbine, idling at a red light, is still a jet engine spinning at tens of thousands of revolutions a minute, and it drinks fuel doing nothing. Town driving, stop, start, idle, stop, was where the turbine was hungriest. And it was hungry. The fuel economy was plainly poor. The second was the weight. When you stepped on the gas in your ordinary car, it responded right now. When you stepped on the gas in the turbine car, there was a beat, a pause while the turbine spooled up to speed, like a jet gathering itself before it surges. Pulling out into fast traffic, that half-second hesitation took some getting used to, and not everyone loved it. And the third was heat, and what came with it. A turbine runs ferociously hot, and a hot engine that burns continuously produces a particular kind of exhaust, nitrogen oxides, the engineers call them. And right at that very moment, America was beginning for the first time to look hard at what was coming out of its tailpipes. The clean air laws were coming. And the turbine, that beautiful, clean-burning dream that would run on anything, turned out to have a real problem with exactly the thing the country was about to start regulating. The future arrived just in time to meet the rules that would forbid it. But the thing that actually killed it, the thing that drove the final nail, wasn't any of that. It was the oldest villain in Detroit. It was the money. These cars were impossibly expensive to build. Each one cost Chrysler something like $50,000 to make. And remember, this is a time when a brand new Chevrolet cost around $3,000. The hand-built Ghia body alone cost a fortune. The turbine engine alone cost more than $10,000. Even if you could somehow build a cheaper production version, the estimates put it at twice the price of a Cadillac. You cannot sell a family car that costs as much as a house. The dream was real. The arithmetic was merciless. And the arithmetic, as it always does in this story, won. So in 1966, the program ended. Chrysler thanked its 203 families, collected its 1,000,000 miles of diaries, and asked for the cars back. And what happened next is the part that, to this day, makes grown men who love these machines go quiet. Chrysler crushed them. Of the 50 cars, 46 were destroyed. There was a cold reason for it. Those gorgeous bodies had been built in Italy and brought into the country under a temporary arrangement that let Chrysler skip the steep import tax on the condition that the cars would either eventually be taxed or destroyed. Faced with paying a fortune in duties on cars it could no longer use, Chrysler chose the crusher. There is film of it. You can still find it. A 1966 newsreel, black and white, grainy, a scrapyard somewhere outside Detroit. A forklift drives into a row of these bronze jet-age beauties. It punches through the door of the first one, lifts it, carries it across the lot, and feeds it into a crusher. Steel folds in on itself, the bronze paint cracks, and one of the hand-built futures becomes a cube of scrap. Then the forklift goes back for the next one, and the next. The most advanced cars in the world, the future itself, fed to a scrapyard, one at a time, to save a tax bill. It is one of the hardest things in all of automotive history to watch. Out on Woodward Avenue, the night before they went, you could imagine one of them sitting at a red light for the last time, that jet whine idling soft in the dark, while a checker cab pulled up alongside, its plain old piston engine clattering away, its driver not even glancing over. You've heard me tell that cab story, the taxi that outlived the company that built it, the cab that just kept going year after year when everything fancier on the road had quit. That cab would still be on Woodward 30 years later. The jet car had 3 months left, and then the crusher. The future sat right next to the past at a stoplight. And it was the past that had somewhere to be in the morning. 9 of them survived. Out of all 50, 9 cars slipped the crusher, handed to museums, a couple kept by Chrysler, scattered to the few places that understood what they were holding. For decades they sat mostly silent, because the men who knew how to keep a turbine running were retiring and dying, and the knowledge was going with them. A jet engine in a museum is a beautiful mute thing. Nobody left alive remembered how to make it sing. And then, here's the turn, and it's the one I promised you. One of those 9 cars came into the hands of a man who loved it enough to wake it up. You know him. He was a boy of 14 when he first saw a turbine car at the 1964 World's Fair, and he never got over it. 60 years later, with his own money and his own stubbornness, he had the engine rebuilt. And the company he turned to build a new turbine for a car the world had forgotten how to keep alive was a company called Williams International, founded by Sam Williams. The same Sam Williams who, as a young engineer, had stood beside George in the beginning, building the very first of these dreams. I told you that name would come back. So one of George's own engineers built the company that, half a century later, brought one of George's cars back to life. The whine returned, the dead future breathed again, and somewhere you have to believe George is smiling. Now, let's be honest about the turbine car, the way this channel always is. By every rule that runs the car business, it was a failure. It was too thirsty. It was too expensive. It was too hot for the coming laws. It never sold a single copy to the public. It cost Chrysler a fortune and ended in a scrapyard. By the cold arithmetic of the ledger, the whole 30-year dream was a waste. And the ledger, as it has been all series long, was right. But I want you to think about what actually happened here, because the ledger cannot see it. A great American company looked at the engine that flew the jets, the sound of the entire future, and it did not lock that dream behind glass at an auto show. It built 50 of them by hand. It painted them the color of tomorrow, and it gave them to a milkman in Ohio, and a housewife in California, and a doctor in a small town nobody's ever heard of. For 3 months it let ordinary people exactly like you, exactly like your father, drive the future down to the grocery store. It trusted regular Americans with a jet engine. It believed they deserved to feel what tomorrow felt like, just to see the looks on their faces. What other country, in what other moment, would ever have done such a thing? That's the thing the crusher couldn't kill. You can destroy 46 cars. You cannot destroy the fact that for one bright, confident, impossible moment, this country was so sure the future was good that it handed the keys to anybody who asked. The jet car was thirsty, and expensive, and doomed, and it whined like an airliner backing out of a driveway on an ordinary morning. And 203 families got to live, for one season of their lives, inside the future America promised them. They gave the cars back, but not one of them ever gave back the memory. 5 evenings now inside the wonders Detroit dared to build. Tonight was the boldest of them, a jet engine in a family driveway. Next time we stay in the atomic jet-age dream, but we follow it somewhere it could never quite land. Because while Chrysler was lending out jet cars, Ford's designers sat down and drew a car powered not by gasoline, not by a turbine, but by a tiny nuclear reactor, a car you would never have to fuel at all. They named it the Nucleon. They built a scale model of it, and they meant it. The catch was a fuel that didn't exist yet. That's a story for another evening. And if you ever saw a turbine car at the World's Fair, on the street, idling at a light with that whine you never forgot, or if your family was one of the lucky 203, then I am begging you, go down to the comments and tell us. Those memories are the rarest thing this channel will ever collect. The old school vehicles that shaped our world. I'll see you on the road before.